Hello! I made some lovely chocolate cupcakes that I wanted to decorate, and so I thought I would show you how I decorate them and the different sort of tips that you can do and the different styles that you get. So to make my icing, I'm going to do a vegetable shortening icing. So that uses vegetable shortening, icing or confectioner's sugar, some vanilla, and then I do have some little colors here to tint it some different colors. Using this sort of with the vegetable shortening icing means that it's shelf stable / can kind of sit at room temperature. If you prefer butter, by all means use butter instead of the shortening, but then you need to make sure that you don't leave it out on a hot sunny day kind of thing, or it will sort of go off and melt and that kind of stuff. So that's why I like to use this icing. Then the other thing I wanted to show you was the different tips. So Wilton make a bunch of different tips. My favorites to use are these three right here. These are called large nozzles. So with the smaller nozzles they do, you would normally put a coupler on the inside of the icing bag. However, with these guys, because they're bigger, you can just pop them straight down the inside of the bag, and I will show you how to do that. I've got a 2A, which is your round tip large. I've got a 1M, which is your open tip star large 1M swirl, so that's your standard swirl on a cupcake. And then I've also got a 2D, which is a drop flower tip, but it makes a lovely sort of big reverse rose kind of pattern. So I'm going to show you how to do all of those, and I've also got my plastic disposable icing bags, which you can use these or you can use reusable ones as well. But what I want to do first is get the icing going. So we've got the icing, we've got it colored, and then I can take you through how to fill your bag, how to use the different tips, and the different designs that you can put on top of your cupcakes. So I'll get my icing sorted and I will come right back. Okay, so to make my icing for my cupcakes, I am doing a buttercream icing but with shortening rather than butter. So in my bowl I have 1 cup of vegetable shortening, and that's just a stick of Crisco really. So I'm going to turn on my mixer. Because it's kind of already soft, I don't really need to mix it much. Pop that back down, and then to that I'm going to add 1 pound of icing sugar. I have sifted this, which is why it's in a bowl. And we'll just get that out. Easy or not. There we go. And then I'm just going to mix on low so that it doesn't sort of fly everywhere. Okay, so now that you can see it's not completely mixed in yet, I'm going to need to add a little bit of liquid. I'm going to add my vanilla, so I'm just going to do a little dash of vanilla. Now if I wanted white icing, I wouldn't be using vanilla that has a color. I would be using the clear vanilla extract. Wilton does one of those, so I often use that if I don't want to add any color to my icing. However, we're going to tint it a different color anyway, so that's absolutely fine. So I'm just going to let that mix in a little bit. Okay, so obviously we need to add a little bit of liquid to thin it out so that it's actually a piping consistency. So I'm just going to use water. Again, not using butter, so I'm not going to use milk. If you're using butter, then by all means use milk to thin it out. So I'm just going to pop in 2 tablespoons and start the mixer going. stop that and scrape down my beater to make sure that the shortening and the icing isn't all getting stuck to the beater. And I'm actually going to give it a quick wipe around as well. There we go. And what I'm trying to do is get the consistency so that it's a spreading consistency. I want to be able to easily sort of manipulate the icing, because then that means you'll also be able to pipe it through your bag. So I'm going to turn on a little longer. And up a little bit. Just gonna have a quick check and see. So you need to sort of practice in terms of figuring out what sort of consistency you like to pipe. So I can tell by scraping this down the edge and how easily I can sort of move it that that's the consistency that I want to pipe with. So I'm going to get my bag ready. As you go, if you get it out of the bowl, get it into the bag and it's too thick and very hard to squeeze out, then by all means take it out of the bag, add a little bit more water. You don't want to be breaking the bag or anything like that. So let me get this ready and get a bag ready, and I'll show you how to put your icing into your bag. So before I actually put the icing into the bags, I did want to tint it some different colors. So I've got these Wilton gel colors, so cornflower blue, a leaf green, and a golden yellow. And these are really good to use because they're a gel, or concentrated paste is what they're called. It just means that it won't dilute your icing. So if you've got your icing to the consistency that you want, then when you add these, it's not going to change that. They're also a little bit more vibrant, so you do need to be careful that you don't add too much. You just want to add a little bit at a time. So I'm actually just going to use a little toothpick, a little bit more than that. And just a little dab with a toothpick in, and then I'll mix that in. And that's coming out of the way. And I've put quite a bit in, and the golden yellow is quite orangey, so that's why you're seeing it sort of change quite orange color. And so you just stir it in, and if you wanted a darker color, you just add another little toothpick. It's easier to add more color rather than take any of it out. So I'm going to go ahead and dye all three of these, all different colors, and then I will show you how to pop them into your icing bag. There we go, so those are our colors. Let me grab the bags. Okay, so I've got my 3 icing bags, 1 for each color, and I'm going to do 1 for each tip. These can be reusable or disposable. I'm using disposable ones. The Wilton ones are quite thick that I've got, so you can actually kind of wash and reuse them a couple of times, which is quite handy. So to get your bag ready, as you can see, it comes solid, so the tip is still there. So you need to cut the hole appropriate for your tip. So I'm going to put the 2A tip into this one. And all you do is you drop it down the inside of the bag like that. And then you push it all the way to the end. And so then you can see that you need to push this back just a little bit. Take your scissors. And all you're going to do is cut off the end. And then you can push that through, and as it pushes through, it seals all the way around, so you don't need to worry about icing going out the side or anything like that. So that's how you get your tip into your bag. So I'll do that with the other 2. Now you can see with this one, I didn't cut it quite far enough, so it's not a problem. You just pop it back, cut a little bit more off, and then push it back through. So with the 1M tip, you want to make sure that your little sort of spikes here, the bottom bit of the spike comes all the way outside of the bag so that you get your nice pattern on your cupcake in your icing. There we go. And then our last one is our 2D. So we've got all 3 of our bags with all 3 of our tips. There we go. Okay, so to fill them, take your bag, fold it open like this. Open it up so you got a nice opening there. Now I get my icing sort of ready on my spoon, ready to go. So just sort of scrape up a big scoop of icing like that. I'll put that down. Then I pick up the bag. My hand is going to go up underneath the bag that I folded over so that it keeps my hands clean. And then you're going to stuff the spoon into that hole. And your hand is going to use it to help scrape off all of the icing. And then you can just sort of get extra little bits out of the bowl. There we go. And the last little bit. So now all you need to do is fold that back over the top, like that, and then no mess, so nothing on my hands, it's all in the bag, it's not squirting out the top. So from there, I want to just squeeze and push and squeeze and push all of the icing down into the bottom, and then I'm going to scrunch the top, twist around, and give it another little squeeze to push it down till it comes out. So that's all I've done. So that bag's now ready to go. So I'll do that with the other 2. There we go. So we've got all 3 bags ready to go. Let me grab my cupcakes and I'll show you the different patterns each of the tips makes. Alright, so I've got my icing in my bags with my tips, and I've got some cupcakes that I made here earlier, chocolate cupcakes, one of my favorites. The recipe for that is also on my channel, so I'll put a little link in there for you. Now, we're going to start with the 2A, which is a large round nozzle. This nozzle is great for doing things like beehive toppings for cupcakes, so that's what I think it looks like anyway. So there are a couple different ways that you can do this. You can start in the middle and then just work your way all the way out around the cupcake, and then just work your way back in. And then that gets your little beehive peak kind of thing going. So that's a very nice one, and then you can finish decorating it however you want, or you can just leave it like that. The other thing that this does is it's a round tip, so you can write with it. On cupcakes, if you were to put a layer of icing over first, that helps, or you can just write straight onto the cupcake, nice big letters like that. Or you can do numbers. If it's someone's birthday and you wanted to do some numbers, it's good for doing big writing letters like that. Very simple. With a round tip, you can obviously do dots as well. So all you need for dots is you just press down and squeeze, and if you don't want a little peak, you just do like a little circle and wind it off. So you squeeze, release, and do a little wind. Squeeze, release, and do a little wind. If you do want the little peak, then by all means squeeze, release, and you need to squeeze and pull up, and squeeze and pull up. Now, because this is a wide tip, you're not going to get a little point, but you do get your little stars. So you can do all sorts of different things. If you want to flatten those back out, just pop a little bit of water on your finger, or just squish them back down. So you get your little dots. And it's quite pretty if you do a whole bunch of different dots, different colors, or if you were to do dots around the sides. So it's quite a fun tip to do. I do tend to do mostly the beehive sort of style one myself if I'm using this tip, but do play around with it. You do have a lot of fun. So with this one, we'll do that one more time just to show you. That has a lot of icing. You can start just on the outside, go all the way around and into the middle. But to build up that sort of nice beehive look, start on the inside, squeezing gently the whole way around, and continue to squeeze back into the middle, and then up off the top you go. So that makes your little beehive. So that's your first tip, that's your 2A. So nice large tip, really good, easy to cover a lot of cupcakes with icing. So let me grab another one and I'll show you how to do the next tip. Okay, so I've got my 1M tip now. This is what you would call a 1M swirl. So this is your classic cupcake swirl. And when you figure out how to, once you've sort of practiced a bit with the icing, you'll figure out that the tips change, but you kind of use the same sort of patterns and squeezing and releasing and that sort of thing. And then you just change the tips out to get different patterns for what you're after. So with this one, we're gonna do the same thing. So you're gonna start in the middle, you're gonna squeeze gently, you're gonna work your way out, you're gonna work your way back in, and then all the way up. And then that is your classic cupcake swirl. Very easy, looks really pretty. Pop a few little sprinkles or sparkles over the top of that, or sort of a little butterfly or anything on top of it, or just like that. It looks really pretty when they're all sort of lined up. You can do a bunch of different colors, all sorts of things like that. With this one as well, if you start in the center, squeezing gently, and just work your way out, you can leave quite a flat swirl. So if you have something you want to put on top of your cupcake, you can still get the really pretty outside, but then the top is flat so that you can easily add on to it. With the 1M, you can also do sort of little star flowers, whatever you want to call them. So you just squeeze and let go, squeeze and let go, squeeze and let go, squeeze and let go. So you get sort of a star pattern. You can fit as many or as few as you want. I want another one in the middle, so I'll just add one in there. So again, quite easy. It's fun to just sort of play around with it, but hopefully this sort of shows you the kind of things that they do, so then you can sort of play around with it yourself. The other thing that's quite fun is doing sort of little shell patterns. So with that, you want to squeeze, move out, and then come back into the middle. You want to squeeze, move out, and come back into the middle. So you get sort of a little shell pattern going. And then you move to the other side, like that, and squeeze and pull back, squeeze and pull back. So that's one of the ones that you can use if you're doing a cake as well. It's a nice little border around the edge of the cake, but it looks really sweet on the top of a cupcake as well. So again, to do the classic 1M swirl, that one you can go in, all the way out, and then back in, and that gets you a huge dollop of icing on the top. However, the way that I usually do it, I actually start on the outside, and I just give it quite a firm squeeze, and move slowly in. So if you look at that one versus this one, they look similar in terms of how they work, but this one sort of gets a slightly higher peak that way, and this one stays a little bit flatter, and it's a little bit less icing. So it just depends on sort of the look and what you're after. So that's your 1M tip. Very fun tip to play around with, and let me get the next tip. Okay, so this is our last tip. This is a Wilton 2D tip. It's called a drop flower tip. If you were doing flowers on a cake, you would simply squeeze this and twist, and as you do that, it does a cute little drop flower. And you can do a whole bunch of these and dry them out and put them onto a cake, or you can do them, it's meant to be dropped, so drop them straight onto the cake. So kind of squeeze and turn. With cupcakes, if you want to do that on a cupcake, you're going to need to put a thin layer of icing. Usually helps so that it sticks to the cupcake a little bit better. I don't usually use that sort of style on cupcakes. I might add one of those little flowers to another cupcake, but for the cupcake itself, I like to use this tip for doing sort of a big kind of easy rose on the top of the cake. It covers the whole top of the cupcake. So for this, again, same sort of idea. So you squeeze in the middle and then move it around as you go out, and then you tail off around the side, and you get a lovely big rose on the top of your cupcake. So let me just show you that again. Oh, my drop flowers are coming off. There we go. So you start in the middle, big squeeze, and you move sweeping kind of all the way around and off. And then that is your lovely big rose. So that is actually what I tend to do most with this tip. Sorry, I'm just cleaning the tip off. I got a little bit on there. You can do the other sort of cupcake swirl. It gives you a slightly different pattern. So again, if you start in the middle, move all the way out, and then you come back in with the same even squeeze, then you get a lovely little peak as well, but it's got a slightly different ridge to it because the tips are pointed in. So let me grab the other one that we did, and you can see the difference. So this one has a slightly more ruffled look to it, whereas this is more of just your classic swirl. So both of them very cute and very pretty, just depends on the look that you're going for. But that's the 2D and that is the 1M. This is also a star tip, and because it does flowers sort of quite well, if you do this squeeze and release, you get a very pretty little flower or a star in the middle of your cupcake. So it does look really pretty if you do a whole bunch of those, and that's just your squeeze and release, squeeze, 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 and you get a little sort of flower pattern all over the top of your cupcakes. Very, very pretty. You can also cover the cupcake first with one layer of icing and then put your little flowers on the top. So that's generally what I do with these. As I showed you shells with the other one, this is what shells would look like. So squeeze and back, just so you can see the difference. This is a much more sort of ruffled look, being a drop flower tip. So I don't tend to do that with this tip. I really use it a lot for the rose. And actually I do just the sort of regular swirl on the top of the cupcake because it looks really, really pretty, especially if you add on some other little bits and pieces to it. So those are the 3 tips that I tend to use to decorate cupcakes. Very easy to use. They're nice big tips, so it doesn't take a lot of squeezing to cover the top of a cupcake. You get some very pretty patterns and your cupcakes look really, really pretty. You'll get lots of compliments. But really it's just practice. So make a batch of icing, practice filling your bags, practice with the different types, make a bunch of cupcakes that you don't need for anything in particular. I'm sure your friends and family will definitely appreciate those as sample tasters. So let me show you the final result sort of each of the tips and the different cupcakes, and you can see how that looks. So there you go, that's how I decorate my cupcakes using the different tips. So you've got your 2D tip here, which gives you a much more sort of ruffled look. So you've got your ruffled sort of peak, your pretty little flowers, and your lovely big rose on the top. Then you've got your 2A, which is just your open tip. So you get your sort of beehive swirl. You could do lots of dots or spots, and it's good for writing big letters and numbers. And then one of my favorites is the 1M. I use this one the most probably to do a 1M swirl on the top of the cupcake, some beautiful little stars, and then your shell pattern, which I do tend to use more on cakes than cupcakes, but still looks very pretty. So have a play around, practice, see what you think. If you've got any questions, post those below, and I will post the recipe for the icing below. If you enjoyed my video, please do give me a thumbs up, and please subscribe if you'd like to see what else I'm up to. And as I said, I will post the recipe or link for the recipe for the chocolate cupcakes if you'd like to try that as well. Enjoy, have fun.